Excuse me for interrupting. Okay, take a deep breath in and out, and another breath in and out. And take one more breath, and as you exhale, let go of all the tension, excitement, and busyness of the day. Relax your forehead, jaw, neck, and shoulders. Find an anchor, find your anchor, maybe your breath or the sounds around you. Stay with your anchor, allowing thoughts and feelings to come and go like waves on the ocean. Be aware of your thoughts and feelings without judging them, returning to your anchor when they pass through your awareness. Now continue to attend to your breath or the sounds around you for a moment. When you're pulled away by thoughts, feelings, or body sensations, recognize them without judgment and let them be. And then return to your anchor and to the present moment. So when you're ready, if you like, open your eyes. So please join me in a brief state check-in by offering your preferred name and noting in a word or a few what's rising in your experience as you join to the meeting or as you introduce yourself using the there is noting format. And we'll talk more about noting formats next week if you want to come. So I'll start and model for you. Um, it's Michael, still Michael, and there is mild exhaustion. There is relief and satisfaction. Jake or Jim, jump in.
This is Jake, and there is some anxiety, some fatigue, and some thoughtfulness.
This is Jim. There is restlessness, and there is excitement, and there is happiness.
Thank you. So this begins the sixth class, whose theme is bringing your practice into the world. As you quiet yourself and become more present with loving awareness, just as that deeper presence helps you stay connected in your personal relationships, there's also quite naturally comes a growing sense of connection to all of life. And out of it, there arises a kind of immediate and intimate responsive care. They say in Zen that there are only two things: you sit and you sweep the garden. And it doesn't matter how big the garden is. So you take your time to quiet yourself. You open your heart and you come truly present for what matters to you. And that's like breathing in. And when you're ready, you get up and breathe out. And you go out to tend the garden of the world. As we gradually quiet the mind and listening in silence for an answer to the question, how do I truly serve the beings I care for? Out of your own stillness, your sense of connection and natural response will grow. Now, it's really critical at this time that we're able to do so. I'm sure you'd agree it's a compelling moment in human history. So, no amount of the outer world developments in nanotechnology, modern computing, engineering, biomedical, space technologies are stopping or abating the continuing warfare, environmental destruction, racism, greed, and the pathological estrangement from each other that we see worldwide because they stem from the human heart. Breathe. They stem from our fears and separation, and out of it our hatred and our grasping. So what's needed to match this extraordinary human outer development is a transformation of our consciousness, individually and collectively. How we hold ourselves, how we deal with our differences and conflicts with one another with dignity and respect, love and generosity, with the best of our human spirit. To extend your mindfulness and compassion into the world, the first critical thing is to center yourself amidst the gain and loss and praise and blame, the 184,000 joys and sorrows of your life. Establishing this practice, this quality of compassion and mindfulness, is an act of courage. It's an act of dignity. And whether you're a school teacher or a parent, a manager or a CEO on some difficult day, your centeredness makes all the difference. In struggle, disturbance in your family, in your community, in this world, your presence is the most powerful act of all. I promise you will know this again. And as the French philosopher Albert Camus says, we all carry within us our places of exile, our crimes, our ravages. Our task is not to unleash them on others and on the world. It is to transform them, to meet them with compassion in ourselves and others. And the power of this is pointed to in a passage from James Baldwin, where he writes, I imagine one of the reasons that people cling to their hate and fear so stubbornly is that they realize that once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with their own pain. And so, if we can't bear our measure of tears and our measure of beauty, if we run away from ourselves, then we blame others or we project it on some other people, on the Russians, opposing political parties, immigrants, Muslims, some other group who looks or acts differently than ourselves. But when we can bear witness to our own pain and loneliness, longing and vulnerability, love, beauty, and magnificence, when we take our seat in the midst of all of these, then it becomes possible to respond to this world without passing off or projecting these difficulties on some other, but from a place of our own wisdom and well-being. So the first step is really to gather the power you gain by your practice of centering and stilling your own heart. The next is to see the possibilities for peace and human thriving, even amidst the difficulties. Excuse me while I let the link comer in. Okay, good. So Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh called this turning compost and garbage into flowers. That the flowers die and they're put into the compost. You know, where else would flowers go, right? And then they become the soil from which new things are born. In many religious and philosophical frames, a dominant theme is a purification of evil, ignorance, anger, and other poisons, a transformation into their own antidotes. And we get to do this because we own these poisons. And the world is life renewing itself. It's the cascade of refreshing. Pause, reboot, thrive.
Text note.
It does it over and over. And people are participants in this process, aware of it or not. And even with the difficulties, as Helen Keller says so beautifully, although the world is full of suffering, it's also full of the overcoming of it. Suffering is not the end of the story. And in places of disconnect, in places of difficulty, you can bring your presence, your tender heart, and you can plant the seeds and tend the garden of the world. So there's a story of a restaurant in the south of France in which the patrons sit at long wooden tables, and before each place setting is a modest bottle of wine. But the tradition in this restaurant is that as people come in and are seated, they don't drink their own wine, but they pour their wine into the glass of a neighbor. In an economic sense, no one has any more wine. But what happens with that simple gesture is community, and connection is born. We begin to serve one another and to tend to the world. And it's completely trustworthy when you do this. As Mark Morford writes, stop thinking the global crisis is all there is and realize that for every ongoing war or religious outrage or environmental devastation, there are 1,000 counterbalancing acts of staggering generosity and humanity and art and beauty happening all over the world right now on a breathtaking scale, from flower box to cathedral. Resist the temptation to drown in fatalism, to shake your head and sigh, and just throw in the karmic towel. Realize this is the perfect moment to envision a re-enchantment of the world, to change the energy, to step right up and crank up your personal volume. Right when it all seems dark and bitter and offensive and acrimonious and conflicted and vile, there's your opening. Remember mystery. And finally, believe in the seeds you plant. Believe you are a part of a groundswell, a resistance, a seemingly small but actually very, very large impending transformation, the beginning of something important and potent and unstoppable. Unquote. So center yourself. See the possibilities that each one of us can make, and then look for ways to embody this. Sow the seeds of beauty and connection in the garden of your world. Whether it's a small business or the largest corporation that you work for, as an artist or a healer, a teacher, a student, a manager, whether you work in food service or hospitality or computer sciences or criminal justice, remember, there is a place to bring your mindfulness and compassion. There's a place to bring awakening. And each of you will make your own unique contributions. No one can tell you quite what that should be. The poet Rumi says, trust yourself. Traveling is as refreshing for some as staying home is for others. Solitude in a mountain place fills with companionship this one and dead weariness for another. This person loves being in charge of working in a community. Another one loves the way that heated iron can be shaped with a hammer. Each has been given a certain work, and all is a motion of love. So each of us is eccentric, unique, weird. We can be honest about that. We're introverts, extroverts, students, teachers, authors. We're binaries and fluid with dynamic intersecting. Some of us are counselors or business executives. Where you are is your garden to tend, to protect, to embody, and to plant your seeds. No one has ever done it quite this way before. There's never been a person exactly like you in the whole of all these wild number of galaxies. A school principal used to like to make sandwiches for the homeless. Her school in the inner city was a neighborhood with many people on the streets. And a couple of days a week, if she wasn't tired at the end of school, she took the pleasure of this service. She would go home and make some sandwiches and then go down on the street and distribute them. And she didn't care if people thanked her or sometimes they rejected or refused it. She wasn't doing it for the kudos. She was doing it because she had food and people were hungry and it felt right to do. As it happens, after some time, the local media found out about her and she became a kind of minor celebrity in her area. Inspired by her work, other teachers and colleagues began to send her money for her ministry. To their surprise, they all received their money back with this short note that read, "Make your own damn sandwiches." And this is how it works. You can't judge what another does. You can't judge the plants in the garden. This one's a squash, and that's a tomato, and that's too small, and that's too large. You water the plants, you fertilize, you tend, you replant. And as you do, you awaken the possibility of beauty exactly where you are. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest criticism and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty and find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded." So in this next to the last class, we're looking together at sustaining mindfulness, compassion, and well-being through the seasons of life for the benefit of all. So how do we best sustain this spirit in tending the world? In 2012, author and mindfulness teacher Wes Nisker interviewed the great environmentalist and poet Gary Snyder, a leading environmentalist who won the Pulitzer Prize in 1975 for poetry. So you might have heard of his first book, Turtle Island. So he asked, "Gary, when you look at the world now and you see the loss of species and global warming and all the climate problems that have grown over the years that you've been trying to educate people, do you have any advice for us at this point?" And Gary, he was 81 years old then. He looked back and he said, "Yes, don't feel guilty." He said, "If you act out of guilt or anger or fear, you will just be perpetuating the problem. And if you want to save the world, save it because you love it, and let that be the force that transforms it." So I've worked with activists in my past lives in a variety of arenas, and often they discover, as you will, that it's not through anger or aggression or fear that the great transformations take place. Those burn you out. That's why activists come back for renewal. It's when the circle of compassion includes yourself. Is this a benefit to myself and to others? And instead of guilt or anger or aggression or rage or fear, let yourself work with a steady and patient vision of what can be and the power of love. Include in your mindfulness and caring your role as a citizen of this world, and let that be a part of your spiritual practice. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Those who say that religion has nothing to do with politics do not know what religion really means." So religion or spirit means tending the sacred in every form. And with your love and your patience and your seeds, you have tremendous power. There's a story told by Adam Hochschild in his 2006 book called Bury the Chains. He tells the story about a small group of people, just 12 of them. They met in an English coffee shop or a tavern in the 1780s, bemoaning the enormous suffering of the slave trade that was driving much of the economy of the British Empire and of empires at the time. And they determined to do everything that they could to stop the evils of slavery. So Thomas Clarkson was the chief among them. And this small group of men rode horseback around England for 30 years. Thomas Clarkson brought well-educated and well-spoken ex-slaves to talk about the Middle Passage, what they'd gone through, how they and their families had survived under the lash, how many had been killed. Into the living rooms and the homes of the English countryside of gentlemen and gentlewomen until he began to turn the tide of the consciousness, the conscience of the country. And after 30 years, this small group, collaborating with the Quakers that they had activated and others, got the Parliament to pass a law outlawing slavery in the whole of the British Empire. And even though the Quakers would not take their hats off for the king, because they believed that was only in the service of God, when Thomas Clarkson died, they all took their hats off. As you plant your own seeds of goodness with your own dedication and your own care or your own patience, you're not alone in your care. Let yourself sense the connection with so many others who just now are planting their seeds in tending the garden of the world. Let that give you heart. In these times of climate change and environmental loss, take time to listen to the wind and the trees as they call to you. Take time to walk by the ocean and feel the rain on your skin and know that you're not alone, that trees join you and all who tend to the earth join you out of love for the earth as it is and for generations ahead. The monks in the forest monasteries of Thailand and Burma, seeing the clear cutting of these old growth forests and the loss of habitat where they had wandered freely as monks for hundreds of years, they became so concerned that they would go out into the depths of the forest and find the largest and eldest tree and do an ordination ceremony, wrapping their own robes around the great tree and making it into the abbot of the forest. And when they had done so, because of the reverence that the people in their culture held for the monks and the abbots, they wouldn't cut down or disturb that whole part of the forest. And they've saved so many or so much of the forest around their monasteries and temples by this simple act of tending and caring. The cultural healing that we need is best accomplished by bringing respect, dignity, loving, or caring attention to economic injustice, to racial and religious divides, to all those who are marginalized, because it's really us. So it might be that your garden is cultivated to nourish the hearts of those around you, to encourage beauty, to see the eyes of a stranger and meet them with a gesture of kindness, to bring that spirit of compassion and tending exactly where you are. There's this story of a physician, a surgeon, another surgeon, who told his colleagues that he kind of wished he'd been an artist and a musician. And he came out of surgery one day after a very complicated surgery where he had saved the life of this woman and was sitting there in the hospital cafeteria with some others who'd been there in that theater. And one of his colleagues said, "You know, you performed amazingly in there. Aren't you glad that you're a surgeon who could save lives instead of being an artist and a musician?" And the surgeon looked back and he said, "Yeah, you know, it went pretty well in there. Thank you. Yeah. And I know why too, because I got up this early this morning and I played Chopin for an hour at the piano." So take whatever it is that nourishes your soul and spend time with that. Plant the seeds of your own mindfulness and compassion inwardly and treasure the mystery of your own life, this human incarnation. tend it beautifully. For the question is not the future of humanity, the question is the presence of eternity. And through these practices of mindfulness, loving awareness, of compassion, you may well be transformed. But remember, it's like practicing piano. You actually have to do them. It's not that they're good ideas, you actually have to practice them. And if you do, they will quiet your mind, help you open your heart, and embody a dignity and wisdom and compassion. And then you could plant beautiful seeds wherever you are. Ruth King, in her latest amazing book, Mindful of Race, speaks to racism as seen through the lens of the three characteristics of existence. If you've read Reverend Tanaka's book, Ocean, you may know them as the nature of impermanence. Change is constant, and all phenomena arise and pass away. And the nature of selflessness. There is no enduring or reliable self. We are a series of ever-changing elemental processes, all arising and passing away. Who we are merges out of interrelating causes and conditions. And then the nature of unreliability and dissatisfaction. Shit happens. And we are not in control of having things go our way. These natural laws, core to the nature of our existence, offer insight into how we relate to social distress, like racial distress. Specifically, what supports more distress and what supports release from distress, despite the painful truth that racial ignorance, injury, and injustice have spread virally in the world with the rise of white supremacy and the chronic denial of white privilege. These three characteristics of existence stand to inform our responses to these truths. So Ruth offers a simple mantra for those of you who've been waiting for one or need one more practical than some that we use. And it goes this way. Life is not personal, permanent, or perfect. And sometimes we just ask ourselves, am I living today as if my life really matters? Or is it more like I'm on my way to something else? That this is filler time or preparing time or after the fact? So the inquiry is really, can we have our moments to be real life, not preparation? Or is life, as they say, what's happening while you're making plans for something else? There's a basic instinct that the more we pay attention, the more the universe reveals itself, that guides us in living our moments fully, not waiting. And that is that everything that happens is part of the path. That those things that seem most in the way, like when we get sick or in the midst of a conflict with a partner or financial difficulties, the things that seem in the way are the way. That's the place asking for attention. Here's a lovely story that I found seriously compelling, and you might like to tell it to somebody else. So we're talking about the British again. When the British first tried to establish golf courses in Calcutta, naturally they'd want to put golf courses in Calcutta, they ran into a certain funky kind of trouble, which is that the monkeys from nearby trees would drop down onto the course and they would chase the balls and throw them around, play with them. And it really infuriated the golfers. And I don't know, it may have been a kind of punishment maybe for colonization. So what they did, they built big fences to try to keep the monkeys out. But monkeys climb, as you know. And so then they tried to transport them in vans, forced migration, right? They finally gave in and they developed a novel rule for the golf courses, which is you have to play the ball wherever the monkey drops it. So in our lives, the monkey drops the ball job layoffs, divorces, health challenges. And when our children are struggling at school or with friends, and that every day in small ways we talk about getting through the day, the traffic jams, the computer malfunctions, the ways we might have perceived insult, the flu before we have to take a trip. So stuff happens. And again, the wisdom is it's part of the path. And that wherever the monkey drops the ball, if we can have that realization, as an auxiliary to Ruth's mantra, I love the mantra, this too. That keeps on including this too. And what we find is that the more we wake up, the less lag time there is in remembering, oh, yeah, this too. This is where waking up can happen. So let's take our 5 minutes for self care, and I'll ring the bell to bring us back. So, so let's set an intention to sit for, 15 minutes for the basic mindfulness practice with breath, body, feelings, emotions, and thoughts. As I said, this might move quicker than It should, if you were going to be meditating across these layers. um, and my apologies for that. So, for the body, let's try this. Establish a posture that's relaxed yet upright, considering the needs of your body, making adjustments as needed. So, ideally, we want to find a balance across 6 points of our body. Your sits bones are firmly planted on your seat or cushion if you're seated. Your spine is vertical without tension, as if the top of your head is being pulled toward the sky. Your shoulders and hips are in alignment, hands resting open with palms up or down on your thighs. Your legs are crossed if that's comfortable. If seated in a chair, place the bottom of both feet firmly on the floor with knees about a hip width apart. Feel a sense of balance on the inside, grounded by your feet and legs, feeling stable from feet to head and down the arms to the hands. And of course, be comfortable, no suffering. Adjust as need be. So your eyes can be opened with a downward diffused gaze a few feet from you, or closed. Your teeth are slightly ajar, naturally relaxing the jaw, your lips lightly touching each other. And you might want to rest the tip of your tongue just behind your front top teeth. Feel the fullness of the mouth and a sense of balance within the mouth. Now feel yourself breathing, erect and dignified, halfway between heaven and earth, well poised to explore the play of experience. So kindly open your attention. You can open your eyes, starting exactly where you are. In the midst of it all, gently note your surroundings with your senses. And then closing your eyes, establishing a sense of presence. Now allowing your awareness to scan through your body and, wherever possible, softening and releasing obvious areas of physical tension. You may want to take a few very full cleansing breaths and then allow your breath to become natural. Notice how the breath breathes itself. Bringing your attention to where you most easily detect the breath, or perhaps where it's most pleasurable, letting this place of experiencing the breath be your home base, an anchor to the present moment. Noticing this breath right here. If you like, you can softly note in the background the calm or ease with each breath. You can also whisper to yourselves as you're like counting through 1 through 10. If the breath is not a good home base for you, you might instead anchor your attention in the sensations of your hands or the sensations of your whole body sitting here. So I invite you to choose your anchor for this meditation now. Now, with a relaxed, interested attention, discovering what the sensations of the breath or your chosen anchor feel like, moment to moment. Where is your attention now? So each time you notice that your mind has wandered off is a moment of mindfulness. Gently bringing your attention back to the inflow and outflow of the breath or your chosen anchor, offering a relaxed, wakeful presence. Now, scanning your body and noticing if any particular sensations are strong and calling your attention. If so, allowing the breath of your home base to recede to the background and bringing an interested, kind presence to the sensations. What do they feel like? So you might be aware and you might be able to note heat or chills, tingling, aching, twisting, stabbing, vibrating. With a soft, open awareness, feeling the sensations as they are. Noticing, are they pleasant or unpleasant? As you fully attend to them, do they become more intense or do they dissipate? So notice how they change. When the sensations are no longer a strong experience, returning to mindfulness of breathing or your chosen anchor. Returning is the key. Return to the breath or chosen anchor 1,000 times, like training a puppy. And after a time, become mindful of any feelings you might notice. Perhaps nestled in your body, near your heart, throat, or stomach. Any perceptions in your body right now of positive, negative, or neutral feelings. Any attraction or aversion. And notice the emotions that slip onto those feelings and ride them for a bit or begin to arise on their own. When an emotion arises, let go of attention to the breath and receive the emotion kindly. And it can be helpful to name it softly, to note sad, sad, or joy, joy, or bored, bored, or anxious, anxious, or excited, excited. As you attend to the emotion, notice carefully where you feel it in your body. Then also notice how it feels as a constellation of sensations. How does it respond to kind awareness? Does it dissolve or get stronger? Does it change into another emotion? You get to notice this too. You are the space of loving awareness that can kindly notice emotions as they come and they go. If you feel resistance to contacting the emotion or it feels very strong, notice the story that the mind tells along with the feelings in your body. Acknowledge it kindly. Then let this be in the background and again bring a gentle presence to the emotion. When the emotion has changed or dissolved, return back to awareness of the breath for a time. And as you follow the sensations of your breathing or the sensations in your body, there will be a stream of thoughts in the background. Let them be. Let them rise and fall like waves of the ocean around the breath. But periodically, whether after 3 breaths or 6 breaths or 10 breaths, a strong thought will arise and carry the attention away. As soon as you notice this thought, name it gently according to its predominant quality. You can use simple notes like planning, remembering, judging, worrying, imagining, or fearful thought, happy thought, interesting thought, creative thought. mindful thought, and so on. Simply naming and acknowledging the thoughts supports the witnessing quality of mindful, loving awareness. Once you've noted a thought gently for some time, you'll notice that it dissolves like a cloud under sunlight. Thoughts are ephemeral. They are empty. They have no substance except what we invest in them. And after the thought is diminished, simply return again to mindfulness of breath and body for a time until another strong experience, whether a thought or emotion or sound, pulls your attention away from your anchor. And again, like training a puppy, when you notice that your mind has wandered from the breath, note the distraction in a word or two and return to your home base in the present moment. Breathe. Stepping out of the stories the thought tells, you can see the common patterns of thought without being so caught in them. And more importantly, you begin to rest in the field of mindful, loving awareness rather than being repeatedly carried away by thought. We'll take a moment or two to practice these. And you might ask yourself, well, what's happening inside me right now? Noticing any sensations, feelings, emotions, and thoughts that are predominant. And then you can ask, can I be with this? Directly feeling the flow of sensation, subtle or strong, letting life be just as it is. And now returning to your home base, offering a calm, steady attention, resting, relaxed, and alert. Now, you can alternate mindfulness of breathing with mindfulness of other experiences when they arise. You become a steady, loving witness of all that arises and passes in your experience. You become a peaceful one, sitting amidst the rising and falling waves of our experience. So when you're ready, please open your eyes. Thank you. So we have some moments for a deeper debrief or any questions or comments you might have for me or the community. Um, we all benefit from all of our ideas and experiences, so feel free to raise your Zoom hand, your real hand, or just open your microphone and speak. And after tonight's final bell, I'll stay in the space for a bit if anyone needs. Jim.
Um, I'm really like this. This is the first formal study of mindfulness meditation that I've done. I've taken some apps and some books, of course, and have been part of some various different groups. There's an insight meditation group that meets on Thursdays around here. Um, at some point in the future, I really want to get into doing guided meditation for others as well. Would you recommend any courses of study, any certifications that are well known, if you will, or accepted? I know it can always be interesting like that, but anything to further to study after this course?
Yeah, absolutely. um, since you mentioned insight meditation, so I'm assuming you have some comfort with that style.
Mhm.
Um, my teachers, Jack Cornfield and Tara Brock,
Mhm.
they do a Power of Awareness course, which is, I think it's 8 weeks or 12 weeks. Um, that's a really good sort of immersion, a couple months immersion, uh, and it's a prerequisite for their um, mindfulness meditation teaching certificate program, which is that's one of the certifications that I've done with them. That was my first teaching certification outside of higher ed. Um, that's a 2 year program. Um, it's really worthwhile. It's definitely it's some work, but I managed to do it with, in between sickness and health and a job and a half and and a wife and adult kids. It's work, but it's really well done, and it's a certification. It's great preparation for teaching and guiding. And people love guided meditation, not just in this context, because as I say a couple times, this is way too fast for most people to really enjoy and find the groove. But uh, guiding meditation is a bit of an art, and with the training, you get to learn, what kind of brushes you get to work with, and what kind of visualizations uh, might might appeal to folks. But that's a great certification program. Dharma Moon, uh, Nick Turn and his people, they have a pretty good certification program. Um, yeah, those are probably the two that I would recommend um, at this point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. You'd be a great teacher, Jim. Yeah, and it's really a pleasure to to guide meditators and and to guide the meditations. It's fun. It's worthwhile. Anybody else? Okay. Um, before I do uh, a different sort of dedication, I just want to remind us all that this is the last of the six. sessions, and I will be here for a seventh session next week. That is, of course, resonates with all the material that we've been dealing with for 6 weeks, but is not an integral portion. You're not going to be missing a significant piece of the picture. It's sort of a bonus, a couple of bonus teachings. One of them is the rain practice, which was developed 20 or so years ago by a teacher and then refreshed by Tara Brach. RAIN stands for uh, for what does it stand for? Uh, Recollect, allow, investigate, and at one time it was uh, nurture, and at another time it was non-identify. So those are four sort of phases of RAIN, and there's a short teaching and then some practice, a guided practice, which is really helpful. Uh, it's a helpful practice if you if you're like me, somebody who bumps into stuck places. I think we all bump into some places where we find ourselves stuck or ruminating or in a headspace that we need to pry ourselves loose from, or especially with emotions that tend to connect to us like like jellyfish. That's hard to get off of, hard to get out from under. RAIN is a good practice for that. And then I'll talk about social meditation, social noting, which is noting out loud. Um, that practice was sort of originated and practiced first in Myanmar, Burma, by the Mahasi Sayadaw folks, um, and then brought to the West, um, and it's a it's really catching on. Social noting, it's a social scene. It's noting out loud in space with others, so it's a whole fresh dynamic, and it can be a wonderful way to cultivate a sense of safety and community, and to notice how easily an intimacy and connectedness can arise even with strangers. So we'll do that, and you're so welcome to come. I will show up and I will wait 15 minutes or so, and whoever's there will do it. Um, Nonetheless, I'll send this recording out as well in a few days, and whatever documents I find you might be interested in. Um, and then I'd like to stay connected to the extent that you would prefer, that you would like to, and we can talk about that um, later. We can talk about that via email after you get the final recording and afterwards, or I might see you next week. I'm totally open to ongoing practice together. So, as a dedication and a closure, the Buddha said, "O nobly born, plant seeds of compassion and let go into spacious awareness that contains all things. Be here in the eternal present. Let this be your resting place your safety, your home. It was wonderful to sit with you all this evening. Hope I see you again soon. Go with love.